Hey guys and girls, happy October once again. Today, as I continue my month-long horror reviews, I'm going to be talking about a Japanese anime from the early 90s, 1993, and it is called Vampire Hunter D. The movie is on Shudder, by the way, if you want to check it out and you haven't. I think I've heard the title of this one before, so I get the impression it has a little bit of a cult following, but I really didn't know much about it going in, and I'd forgotten that it was an anime anyway. And like a lot of them, I'm guessing it might come from a graphic novel, but I'm not really too sure. So anyone who knows about this and is more familiar, then you can let me know in the comments if it's from a graphic novel and if it does have quite a big, at least cult following, like I thought it might have been. So the setup is that the title character is this sort of underworld vigilante figure who defends girls who have been bitten by vampires and who are in danger of being turned by vampires. So the lead character of Doris has been bitten by a vampire, and Vampire D Hunter, or Vampire Hunter D, sorry, D as Doris calls him throughout the film, comes to her rescue, tries to save her, but it's more complicated than that because the town she comes from has an issue with him and has an issue with her being protected and kept alive, and sort of feels then her being kept around is going to cause them more trouble than it's worth. And there's also a past incident that we start the movie off on, which is 50 years in the past. And it's another girl, but a girl who's quite sort of tough and badass. We see her defend herself, and there's some big action in her scene. But at one point, the cross necklace falls off her, and that leaves her exposed to a vampire. And there's a whole back and forth where she's blasting like her gun at him, but in the end she is bitten. And this example from the past is referenced later on with Doris, and it says then this girl was locked away and sacrificed. And to further complicate things, the Count, who originally started this town, wants to claim Doris as his bride, so wants to kidnap her. He sends a bunch of his agents and family members, including his daughter, after her, and Vampire D Hunter has to try and defend them against them. So there's a bunch of mythology going on, there's a bunch of different characters, and it's a pretty solid movie. It's an enjoyable movie if you're into your sort of pulpy anime with a lot of style, a lot of violence, some good action. Then I think you're going to enjoy this. But it's also very stylish, like a lot of Japanese animes are. Like the style cannot be faulted. Like there's really good use of color, really good movement from the characters, exciting, quite expansive sort of action. But it also has this very nihilistic type vibe, which, again, a lot of anime from Asia does sort of have. It's quite a, I don't know if I want to say pessimistic, but it is a very, like, grim world view and very sort of blackly comical, and it has a certain feel to it where it's really kind of full on and edge of your seat type stuff, and something really bad could happen here. You have that quite a lot. So it does build up the stakes quite well in that regard. It's quite a short film, and I think a lot does happen in the movie because you do have a whole swarm of characters, as I said, because the Vampire Hunter D comes up against. It is funny her just calling him D all the time. But like, there's all these sea creatures he comes up against at some point. As I said, you've got like the gang which is sent after Doris and sent to kill Vampire Hunter D, including the daughter of the Count and another character who she is like connected with, who she doesn't get along with because he wants to enter the family, and he sees then the way to do that is to get Doris and to kill Vampire Hunter D. So there's a little bit of friction there, and there's all sorts of like unscrupulous things because of the Count wanting to marry this young girl, and the way she is treated by her own townsfolk. And like it does have a very sort of sleazy sort of vibe to it sometimes, because there's this one character who she knows from around the town, and he's always trying to impress like the higher up, the law enforcement. And she says, or he says to Doris at some point, like, you don't need to hire this vampire hunter. I'll protect you. And of course, he's very sleazy. He wants to like seduce her and get with her, and there's this whole thing really where this sort of thing sometimes coming out of Asia, you do get this where it's a very kind of, it's just that sort of depiction of a world where characters are always trying to be quite sleazy and seductive, and it's really quite explicit in some of the stuff it shows with the girl. And well, certain things are implied. I mean, at one point, like her breast randomly kind of comes out because someone who she trusts, a doctor who it turns out I think is being possessed. I wasn't quite sure, but he turns against her and tries to like seduce her. So there's a whole bunch of stuff like that. But the look of it, as I said, is it's very beautifully drawn, like the big mountains, the landscapes. There's some great use of colour. And there's some fun action. I think there's quite a nice character development between the two main characters, at least, because we get a little bit more into Vampire Hunter D and why he is sort of so stoic, why he doesn't really talk that much. And they do build a little bit of a rapport, and we find out then he is. I guess it's not really surprised because he's like the protagonist who has to try and save this girl, but it's, he does have a certain moral code when it comes to this thing, so he is very stoic. And I think the main problem is that a lot happens in the movie, and it does happen quite fast because you do get characters who kind of start off as one thing and then they sort of switch around, and it does seem then that happens a bit too fast, and also just then it happens maybe a bit too easily, and just then there's certain things going on at times, and I think they're going on a bit too much. There's a bit too much going on. That was a weird way to say it, but that's what I mean. And because also at one point the daughter of the Count takes Doris's side, like they start off on the opposite end, and she starts to feel sorry for her. I guess she can kind of relate a little bit, being a young girl herself, but she actually stands up for her at one point and tries to save her and defend her. Because you've also got Doris's brother, and this girl sort of comes along after that, and she sides with those two. The brother doesn't actually do much, like you just see him here and there, so maybe he could have got a bigger part. And you do have a very epic sort of ending where you've got this big final battle. But yeah, it does have a certain like almost like Western style feel, as in a Western. I don't mean as in like Western country, but like it does have that sort of, those sorts of characters and those sorts of good versus evil mentalities. But it is very full on and pulpy, like a lot of these tend to be. But yeah, it was good fun. It was solid fun. It's not going to blow you away. I think it is mostly the animation style and some of the hard hitting action that's really going to pull you into it. But it's it's quite an easy watch. Like, even though I said there's some dark stuff happening, you certainly seem much darker from other things, and there's some quite on the nose dialogue. Like, there's some dialogue where it's a bit too maybe it's like, okay, you're making puns here, or it gets a little bit melodramatic with certain lines of dialogue. And I watched it in the dub. That might make that stuff worse. But like the sleazy character I mentioned, who was okay, I'll protect you, Doris, but yeah, I'm really trying to get with you. I think he was one like that, where it was just, yeah, some of his dialogue got a little bit much. But yeah, it's a very solid watch. You know, you're gonna have a pleasing time, and it's gonna work for a certain audience. It definitely won't be for everyone, but I get the impression it's a very niche cult type film. So that's Vampire Hunter D, which is on Shudder now. So from 1993. It was fun. I mean, I'll give it about 6 out of 10 because it wasn't necessarily amazing, but it was a fun, decent watch. So, yeah, that's my thoughts on that one. Let me know what you guys think of it if you've seen it in the comments below. Like, subscribe as always, and do let me know a little bit more about it because I didn't know much about it going in. And you can support me patreon.com/boardnow, or as a channel member you can also hype up the video on the hype button, which is a new YouTube feature, or you can donate to my PayPal account or give me a super chat. But thanks everyone, keep watching horror movies. See you soon.